All right. So I want to take you further. Ready, ready, ready. Now let's move to Hebrews chapter 11, and from verse 8 we begin. By faith, Abraham, when he was called to go out into a place which he should have to receive for an inheritance, obeyed and he went out. He went out not knowing whither he went, because God told him, go to the place I'm going to show you. And he went. And God hadn't given him the address. So he was going. By faith he sojourned in the land of promise, as in a strange country, dwelling in tabernacles with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise. Look at this. For he looked for a city which had foundations, whose builder and maker is God. You see, when God called him and said, I want you to go to a place that I'll show you, he figured in his heart, God's taking him to a city that God had built. So he goes out. He's headed for God's city. God's city. A city which had foundations, whose builder and maker is God. That means that city runs on principles of God. It had foundations. Foundations stand for principles, a way of life, whose builder and maker is God. He's headed to God's city. He's come out of this city, headed to God's city. Look at verse 16. But now they desire a better country that is unheavenly. Oh, why does it say that? Because you read in the verses 11 to 15, he tells us about how that several of them, others like him, men and women of faith, how that they died not having received the promises. So he says, but now they desire a better country, better than where they came from. That is a heavenly country. Wherefore God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he had prepared for them a city. He says God is not ashamed to be identified with them, because truly he prepared for them a city. Think about it. Abraham's looking for a city that has foundations, whose builder and maker is God. Noah is journeying, and he was told to build an ark. He builds the ark, and he's being transported by the Spirit of God because he don't know where he's going. The rains have fallen, the floods have gone high and carried the ark up, and he's floating. He doesn't know where it's leading him. But he is in the hand of God. The Bible says by building the ark, he condemned the world. Wow. So, Abraham's looking for a city whose builder and maker is God. And the Bible says that God truly prepared for them a city. So he's not ashamed to be called their God. In other words, God's saying, you're right. The city you're looking for, I got it. The city you're looking for. The Bible says they died not having received the promises. Meaning all their life long, they had their focus on the city of God. So, you know, something that the Bible tells us that's so important. I'm going to show that to you in a second. But let's go to Hebrews chapter 12 from verse 22. Hebrews chapter 12 from verse 22. It tells us that we have arrived somewhere. Now, before, maybe go to verse 20. It's fairly long. I wish I could cut it, but maybe we'll start it from 18 somewhere. Yeah. Start from 18. For ye are not come unto the mount that might be touched and that burned with fire, nor unto blackness and darkness and tempest, and the sound of a trumpet, and the voice of words, which voice they that heard entreated that the word should not be spoken to them anymore. Now, he's saying that those who went out of Egypt, when the children of Israel went out of Egypt and finally came to the mountain of God to hear the voice of God, it was this mountain they came to. And it says, look at that verse 18 again. It says, it burned with fire, with blackness and darkness and tempests. See, because God stepped on it, it burned with flames. And look at the next thing. And the sound of a trumpet and the voice of words, which voice they that heard entreated that the word should not be spoken to them anymore. They were scared to death when they heard the voice of God and all of those thunderings. For they could not endure that which was commanded, and if so much as a beast touch the mountain, it shall be stoned or thrust through with a dart. And so terrible was the sight that Moses said, I exceedingly fear and quake. Even Moses, who assembled them, he was scared. So the Bible says, we have not been brought to that mountain of fear. Look at verse 22. But ye are come unto Mount Zion, and unto the city of the living God. Oh. Where Abraham wanted to go. Ye are come. It's not, he didn't say ye shall come. It's not a promise. Ye are come.